Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going into a philosophy that, well, it really challenges almost the entire history of organized religion. And we're using one single image as our starting point.
A powerful one.
The sound of a flute played by a dancing god
Yeah.
versus the image of a cross.
It's the ultimate contrast, isn't it? When you look at the founders of most traditional paths, Mahavira, Buddha, even Christ, the sources all point to this essential mood of denial. These paths are almost always about finding liberation from this life, seeking another world, renouncing the physical.
Absolutely. Our sources make a pretty stark observation about Jesus, actually.
That he never laughed.
He never laughed. And that somber, withdrawn look became attractive. Well, it became attractive to people who were already miserable and I guess were looking for a kind of validation for their own suffering.
And that entire framework of denial is precisely why our subject today, Krishna, is just so unique, so profoundly different.
He's the exception.
This is the sole exception to this massive historical wave of what you could call life negativity.
And that's our mission for this deep dive, to really explore how Krishna's philosophy, which is built on total affirmation of life, somehow manages to absorb and resolve life's deepest paradoxes.
Right. The sources are clear that India considered him the perfect incarnation of God.
The whole incarnation.
Exactly. Whole. Because he didn't shy away from anything life offered. The good, the bad, the sacred, the profane, even figures like Rama, who were seen as great, they were still considered incomplete.
But Krishna embodies the full, messy, contradictory spectrum.
And to get how radical that is, you have to look at it from the outside. I'm thinking of that famous critique from Albert Schweitzer.
Oh, that Indian religion is life negative.
Yes. And the source material actually agrees with him, for the most part. It says that critique is largely accurate if you leave Krishna out of the equation.
So most paths were just footpaths of renunciation.
But Krishna offers a highway, and his central revolutionary idea is the acceptance of opposites together at the same time.
You can't separate the spiritual from the sensual.
Or the joy from the pain. The only way to be genuinely whole is to accept all the contradictions.
Which immediately brings up the danger of choice.
This is the core of it. The moment you choose one part of life, say, you decide to be purely spiritual and you deny the opposite. You've just fragmented yourself.
And that denied part, it doesn't just vanish.
No. The sources say it will pursue and haunt him.
That's such a powerful psychological insight. I mean,
Really?
Can you give us an example of how that haunting works?
It's simple, but it's devastating. You just have to look at any religion or society that makes suppressing sexuality its main goal.
Right.
The source material points out that a culture like that ends up creating nothing but sexuality. The mind becomes obsessed with the very thing it's denying.
So the energy doesn't disappear.
It just poisons the well. Denial doesn't save you. It makes you a prisoner.
And this fragmentation is the exact opposite of integration. Which brings us to a really different definition of yoga.
It's not about the poses here, that's for sure.
Not at all.
For Krishna, yoga just means to be united, to be integrated, to be whole. And the way you get there.
Choicelessness.
Choicelessness. When you start picking sides with reality, when you just accept the whole of life as it comes, that is yoga. You become integrated.
Which sounds simple, but the sources show it's incredibly hard, even for his most devoted followers.
It really highlights our human tendency to, break things down into manageable pieces. We just can't seem to hold the totality.
Like the poet Surdas.
A perfect example. An intense devotee, but he could only accept Krishna as an innocent child, the playful baby. He didn't have the courage for the adult Krishna.
The lover and the warrior.
Exactly. And the sources remind us he actually blinded himself.
Which is just chilling.
He blinded himself because he was afraid of the lust that looking at the world might stir up in him. He literally fragmented his own senses to preserve a fragmented God.
Wow. And then on the other side, you have the poet Keshavadis.
Who did the opposite? He focused only on the youthful, hedonistic Krishna, the dancer, the romantic, and completely ignored the philosopher or the child.
So they both just picked a comfortable slice of the whole.
They did. And Krishna's life is a standing rejection of that tendency.
Okay, so let's take this principle of accepting opposites and apply it to something bigger, like society. The source material presents this, a genuinely mind-bending paradox about freedom and equality.
It really does. It forces you to question some fundamental political assumptions. The logic we often hear is that we must achieve equality, but
doing that often means sacrificing freedom.
And the problem, as the sources state it, is that once you give up freedom, it's almost impossible to get it back.
That's a huge claim. Why does this philosophy insist that the pursuit of equality destroys freedom?
Because it argues they operate on totally different planes. Freedom is described as an absolutely natural phenomenon. It's just part of being human.
You don't have to be given it. It just has to not be taken away.
Precisely. But equality, the text says, is neither natural nor possible. It calls it unpsychological.
Unpsychological, meaning it goes against our basic nature.
Completely, because people are naturally different in talent, in drive, in everything. So to enforce equality, the source says you have to perform a painful operation.
The quote is, they all will have to be cut to equal size.
Chilling, isn't it? You have to level everyone down. And you simply cannot do that without first taking away their freedom to be different.
It's a very critical lens on social engineering. And this thread on conflict continues with its analysis of war, which is just as radical.
The argument is that the world has become a global village. Total war on Earth is now sheer stupidity.
The planet's just too small for it.
The potential for destruction is just too great. But this doesn't mean conflict ends, it just moves.
It moves to another plane. The sources predict the real war has already started on other planets.
Right, and it dismisses current conflicts, regional wars, as just play fights to keep the fools busy here.
That's an incredible statement. And then comes the strategic pivot. Those who own the moon will own this Earth.
It's a very specific prediction about military positioning. Setting up missile bases on the moon to get absolute leverage over the planet. The battlefield changes, but the desire for control remains.
So how does Krishna, the man of total acceptance, deal with the ultimate contradiction of war? We have the Mahabharata.
And he shows total desirelessness. They even called him Rancordas, the renegade from war, because he refused to fight himself.
But he didn't run away from it.
No, and his arrangement is key. He gave his entire army to the Kauravas, the side driven by greed. But he gave only himself as a non-fighting guide to the other side, the Pandavas.
He essentially put himself outside the material calculation of power. He's not an escapist, but he's not a warmonger either.
He's embodying that choicelessness, dealing with reality, but completely detached from the outcome.
And that detachment, that non-attachment, leads perfectly into how this philosophy sees work and the very purpose of life itself.
It's a beautiful non-utilitarian view. Life is for its own sake.
The river flows for the joy of flowing.
Exactly. It doesn't need a purpose beyond that. And that perspective completely flips our modern hierarchy of action. Why do we work?
Well, the sources say we work so that we can live. And living, at its best, means to celebrate.
Work is supposed to be secondary, a means to an end. But we've turned it on its head.
We've become obsessed with work, this do-or-die mentality of the workaholic. And it just creates this immense anxiety, burnout culture.
We've completely forgotten the purpose of the effort. And when you lose the ability to truly celebrate that spontaneous joy, you look for cheap substitutes.
Entertainment.
Entertainment, which the sources call a very poor substitute.
Why?
Because others do it and we are only spectators. We watch a movie, watch a concert.
It's vicarious pleasure. We're watching someone else live fully, which only makes us feel more passive.
Exactly. True celebration is participatory. And now you have to contrast that celebratory path with the traditional paths to enlightenment.
Right? Figures like Buddha or Mahavira, who relied on what the source calls heroic effort.
Fasting, intense austerity, years of meditation. Their sadhana, they had to earn their enlightenment.
But Krishna seems eternally enlightened without any of that. His sadhana is just dance, song, celebration. How does he get to the same place without all the effort?
And this is where we hit one of the deepest points, the idea of moksha, or freedom. For Krishna, freedom is non-causal.
Okay, let's pause on that. Non-causal, that's a huge idea. What does that actually get rid of?
It gets rid of the idea that you can earn it. If freedom was causal, I mean, if you got it because you fasted for so many days or did certain rituals.
Then it would be a formula, a technology.
Anyone could follow the steps and become Mahavira, but that's just not how it works. The actions aren't the cause.
You can't earn freedom like a paycheck?
No, it can't be earned. It just is. It arises not from what you do, but from who you are. Or maybe from who you stop pretending to be.
It happens in an effortless space.
The people who get this, the blissful people, they live moment to moment. They're free from psychological time.
Because misery, the sources say, comes from dragging around the dead past and the imaginary future.
And this brings us right back to the symbol we started with, the flute.
The flute is the perfect metaphor for this state of being. The cross is pain and sacrifice.
And the flute is ease. It's an act without a purpose. And because of that, it becomes this act of pure thanksgiving. It's spontaneous. It needs a singing and dancing heart. You can't force it.
It's the sound of effortless existence. And this whole philosophy, with its focus on total acceptance, it feels incredibly relevant today.
The sources actually suggest that after Freud forced us to confront our suppressed instincts, all that darkness the old religions denied, a return of Krishna, is kind of inevitable.
So the growing fascination in the West, they hear Krishna chants. It's all described as a cultural preparation.
A preparation for the birth of Krishna consciousness, for a society to get to a point where it might actually give up work and embrace celebration as their way of life.
When the anxiety of maximum effort becomes too much to bear.
The alternative of effortless joy becomes the only real choice. And that totality has to include everything, even the things that make us uncomfortable, like sex.
Krishna's life embraces it so naturally, which is a huge contrast to the guilt-ridden attempts by later commentators to, sanitize the stories.
You see it with the stories of the gopis, the young women he danced with. Later writers, afraid of natural sexuality, claimed the pranks with their clothes were only done by the child Krishna.
Right, to make it innocent and non-threatening.
They cut off the adult narrative. But true totality means accepting clothes and nudity together, accepting our natural state without judgment. Total acceptance is the cure for the illness that denial creates.
So to sum all this up, Krishna's philosophy is this wide, inclusive highway to the same destination that others tried to reach on narrow, renunciative footpaths.
It's integration, not rejection. The beautiful and the terrifying, the spiritual and the material, all of it. And that presents a huge challenge to each of us.
A challenge of choicelessness.
Yes. The sources make a simple claim. The person who can accept happiness and misery together, without judging them, without naming them, enters a state of bliss. Instantly.
You defeat evaluation, so you defeat time itself. And that's really the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener.
Krishna's life reflects the potential in every single person to reach their own fullest flowering, their own Krishnahood.
But the goal is never imitation.
Never. Imitation is a betrayal of yourself. It's getting trapped in someone else's path. The real goal is self-understanding.
Using this philosophy of totality to know who you are and what you can be, free from the limits you put on yourself.
Free from choice and effort.
So the question to leave you with isn't how to imitate the flute player, but what does your unique, effortless, total flowering look like when you finally stop denying half of your own existence?
Something to think about.
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.